We will now do the mimer on Memhei Amid Aleph, going through Memvav Amid Aleph, which is Simani Kechoisam Al Libcha, which means I want to be placed as a stamp, as a on your heart, a seal, like a seal on your heart. So we know the idea of the seal is the idea of tefillin, which the seal on the heart is the tefillin sharosh, which refers to the straps of the tefillin that hang over the heart. Now they come from the head and they hang over the heart. And then we have the seal on your hand, on your arm, that refers to the tefillin of the hand. And it brings on Makaridas where this is from the Medrash and Hashirim, etc. And this is the request of the Jewish people, that where should be the seal of God? It should be from the Jewish people. And it says, the rabbis say that tefillin of the creator of the world. What does it say in them? Umi kamchik Yisrael, who's like my nation, the Jewish people. Or it says, Umi gadol, who is a great nation, etc. These are all written in the tefillin of Hashem. So we see Hashem has tefillin. That means that we should be a seal on him. And the explanation of this idea of the seal is, for example, we find that there's a seal that someone seals within wax, and there becomes another seal within that, on that wax. And we find this follows: that if the letters that were on the seal are actually inverted in the seal, then on the wax it becomes extroverted. It comes out. On the other hand, if the letters that were on the seal are protruding, so then on the wax it becomes inverted. It goes into the wax. And to understand this in this example, we know that the godly spark that there is, as a spark of godliness that there is, that can enclose itself in the soul of every Jew, that there should be afterwards intellect and emotions and thought, speech, and action, and all this comes from this hidden love that is this godly spark that's within and hidden within the person. And you have to bring it out from its concealed state to a revealed state, that it should be able to ascend above like a flame of fire, that it wants to go out from its sheath and, so to speak, return to Hashem. And this is called the level of a mountain, a hill, that actually protrudes from the valley of the earth, and it goes out. And this is what it says, like not like Avram, that was called a mountain. It says in the Medrash that we shouldn't be like Avram, like called a mountain, rather like Yaakov. We'll see soon, later on in the Mimer, what's the great things that are greater than the mountain. But the mountain refers to the level of Avraham, which is the mountain, which that is the love, that there should be a love to Hashem from the term of a desire, that it's avaya, that there should be that we want that Hashem should be our power and our strength, and not as it's just clothed within the soul and therefore concealed, but rather revealed, and it should be our passion, and it should be that we're going out of ourselves to Hashem. And that's through, how do we accomplish this? Through Shema Yisrael, Hero Israel, which Yisrael refers to the godly spark that there is, and it's enclosed within the soul, and it's spread out, so to speak, in the spreading out of the soul in all the different divisions of the intellect and emotions and thought, speech, and actions. And then it means the Hear Israel means to gather it. Shema also comes from the term of gathering, that you should gather it. And to where? To gather it all to its source, which is in Hashem. Why? Because Hashem Elokeinu. What does it mean Hashem is our God, Hashem is my strength? Which these are the two beloved ones that never separate. Which means that there at every moment there's a renewal of the world from nothing into something, which happens at all times. In other words, Ayin and Yesh is Chachma and Bina. And these two never separate, meaning that in every Yesh, in every self, in every being of self, there's at every moment there's the Ayin, there's God, there's the level of Chachma. And as it says, it one who renews and with this kindness at every moment. And therefore, Hashem is one without any change whatsoever at all times. Why? Because the power of the effector is not within the affected, so to speak, in a completely. It's not mamish enclosed within it. Why? Because my thought is not like your thought. In other words, the Eibishter, the way it is by us that we have to affect something, we have to be totally involved. That's not the way it works by the Eibishter. The Eibishter can make it happen without being totally involved. But rather, meaning that the glory of Hashem fills the world. In other words, that this physical world is the level of Malchus of the world of Asiyah. And then we have a higher level, which is the lower level of Gan Eden, which is the level of Malchus of Yetzirah. Then we have the supernal Gan Eden, which is the level of Malchus of Bria. That all these levels are only the level of Malchus. Just a kingship, which what is the level of Malchus? We know that it means just a ray, a light, a reflection. And we see that tzaddikim, they sit in Gan Eden and they have the enjoyment of the ray, the light of the Shechina, which means Shechina's level of Malchus. And it's only the level of name, as it says, Yachid Chei Ha'olam Melech, that all the life force of the world is only from the level of Melech, from king. In other words, it's all just a ray, it's just a little light that comes. It's not the essence of it at all. It's a light of the essence. And therefore, we'll come to love Hashem with all your Hashem Alikecha. Why? Because you want nothing in heaven. Your whole soul and being will go out to Hashem with all your might, without any limit, because you'll have nothing, no vessel that could constrain the desire you have for Hashem. Rather, you just want to cleave to Mamish in the light of Hashem itself, the source of all life, the source of all pleasure, beyond the level of Malchus, beyond everything. But how could you come to this level in Shema, to gather yourself together, to be totally dedicated and wanting only Hashem with such love? That's only through having first the level of Psukkah de Zimra, the blessings of and the brachas of Shema. In other words, the songs that we say before the blessings of Shema and the blessings of Shema. Which, what does this mean? As we say there, that the exaltedness of Hashem is in their throat. And a sword of sharp edges, which what do they do with the sword of sharp edges? They cut off all the things that are thorns in the way. Through what? Through exalting Hashem in Shema and in the blessings of Shema. How do we do that? Because through that, which we say how the angels, they make Hashem holy with a total nullification, and all the other angels, that with a great commotion, because they are a level of self. They have a certain level of identity, and it says tens and tens of thousands and million and all types, that they're totally dedicated to Hashem. And when they see how the self becomes nullified, why? Because Hashem Tzvais is holy. It says Ki Kadosh Hashem Tzvais. In other words, that which gets drawn down into the level of Tzvais, which Tzvais refers to the level of God as he is already in the level of Malchus and lower, which already refers to units. That we say that itself is a level of holy and separated. Therefore, they see that even that which creates all the world, what really is inside of it, what really is guiding it, is beyond the world. So that causes a great commotion with a great voice, a great sound. On the other hand, the level of the Srafim, which is a higher level of angels, they stand above this. But for sure, this lower world and everything that's above, within it has to be with even a greater commotion because of this nullification of the being that's all really God. And this is the idea of Shema, with a great excitement on the nullification that we have, that we become one within the oneness of Hashem, until we finish off Aniyah L'Shem L'Keichem Mamish, that Hashem himself is our power and our strength and our God. And then after that we come to Shemona Esrei, which is a silent davening, which that is like someone who's speaking into the ears of a king in quiet. And on this we say, Hashem, open up my lips, that in order that I should be able to say your praises, which is Baruch Ata, to draw you down. And this is all called the level of a har, a mountain, which this is the revelation of the love that's concealed within the person, to go out from its concealment to a revealed state. And that's the level of har. To go out, be, so to speak, protruding from the level of self towards Hashem. But then there's another level of mountain. He says the mountain of the mountains, which is a mountain upon a mountain, which that's the idea that Hashem put a mountain upon us like a barrel at the time of the giving of the Torah. Which this is drawing down from a higher level of the mountain, which is even higher over this lower mountain of ours. That there should be mountain upon mountain. Why? Because through the level of B'chol Nafshecha, with all your soul, which is that you could leave your spirit to the spirit of Hashem, and your thought to the thought of Hashem, we actually arouse from above something even greater. And it happens of its own and by its way, without any type of toil. That what happens at the word of Hashem, there becomes a Shar Noichi Mitzavcha, that I command you, come onto your heart. And that is the higher level of the mountain, which as we say, Torah comes from the level of wisdom. Chachma nafkes, meaning Chachma is a level of nullification, as it says before, that all were created with Chachma. And what's the greatness then? If everything was created with Chachma, what's the greatness of Chachma, of the wisdom of Torah over all other wisdom? Then in the wisdom of Torah, you have the nullification, Shemish Chaschait Kodesh, the holy oil, that's nullification. That means that the whole Torah is to bring everything to the level of nullification and the oneness of Hashem, which is to give merit to those who are meritorious and to bring judgment to those who are chayiv, and to separate the good from the bad, or the bad from the good, to refine everything, and that happens to the level of Chacham, as it says, with wisdom all is refined. That there should be a total nullification to the one Hashem through the 248 positive commandments, the 365 negative commandments. That means through the positive commandments we cleave to Hashem, which are the 248 limbs of the king, And they're like vessels that are through which God dwells down here, and also through the negative commandments that we separate the bad from the good. And this nullification comes from the arousal from below. That when we raise our soul to be like Hashem, that just like He is merciful, we should be merciful, and then we draw down that we should be blessed, and we should be holy with His mitzvahs. In other words, with God's mitzvahs and our connection to Him. Through that, that our horn is uplifted, and through that we get saturated with the oil of Hashem. Now, and the idea of the saturation of the oil of Hashem is a very important point there, and that's I think what he's making here. This higher level of mountain, as it comes revealed down to us, is not revealed. In other words, we have Hashem within us, but we see it through the garments. We see it through the chachma, as he says before. Or like oil that penetrates and it's within you, but you don't see the oil as being separate or above the person. And he said, as it says in his base, that all this happens is the ascension of the worlds from below to above, and that's the idea that you have a protruding seal from below. And therefore it becomes from above to below a actual intruded a seal that is inverted. Why? Because we say that Hashem's kindness and tzedakah is not a known one, and He is not of the attributes of chesed and gvura, but rather only through that which we arouse from below. That anybody who's involved in Torah, Hashem, so to speak, learns opposite Him. In other words, it becomes this enclothing of the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu into the wisdom, into the level of chachma, and therefore we say vasisam oisam or vasisam atam, that you make it. That says that you make and therefore sustain all the words of Hashem, which this is the idea of that through us doing we draw down godliness. But how does this happen? It happens in a way that now it's inverted from above, which means Hashem descends onto the mountain of Sinai, that there becomes a enclothing of the light of Hashem in a concealed way, and this is the level of the tefillin of the hand. That's happened while you're sitting. According to many opinions, you put on the tefillin shel yad while you're sitting, which this is connected to the level of Shema, and the blessings of Shema, which is the level of davening as is done in Shema, that we sit, unlike Shemona Esrei where we stand, and this is with a great excitement from below to above. As we say, you should holy for me all your firstborn, which is the level of Chachma, which is the beginning, and therefore the same way, from above to below, there becomes the Torah of Hashem, which is Hashem, the Torah that comes from wisdom in your mouth. But in which way? That we see your mouth, meaning it is inverted, it is concealed within your mouth. And then we have the second parsha of Shema, which is the going out of Egypt, which is a revelation of this concealed love that comes from a concealed state of the mind to the actual revealed state of the heart. Because as long as it's in the brain, it's in a way of galus, it's in a way of limitation, it's not revealed. On the other hand, when it gets revealed in the heart, then it's called being born, as it says in the verse, and there in another pasuk it says, "B'yom hu ledas, the day you're born," which refers to the time of leaving Egypt. And this is the revelation of joy that happens in a mitzvah, as we say, that the mother of the sons is joyful, or because you did not serve Hashem with joy, which is level of joy, that is the revelation of the parsha of Shema, V'hayim Shemaya, which is the love and fear of Hashem, and in the action, this is the revelation that happens in tzedakah. In other words, just like through the first parsha of Shema, we draw down Torah, so too through the second parsha, we draw it down through tzedakah, which is the level of being merciful, and through that we arouse above that Hashem is also merciful to us. Because even though He is not of the midas, in other words, because Hashem does not have excitement as we do, because you can't say in the light of the Ein Sof, which has in it no change of desire whatsoever, heaven forbid, you can't say that He changes and all of a sudden he has mercy, but rather He encloses Himself within the attribute of mercy through the action of tzedakah, which we arouse from below, because it's an arousal from above, and therefore we have tzedakah l'chaim, tzedakah for life, and also we have the foundation of life, which is a place where God dwells. But what do we see? We see it through Him being kind. We see it through His being merciful, which that level of Him being merciful is already a vessel. It's already through something He's enclosed in. We don't see Hashem Himself. And this is the idea that it's intruded from above to below, because in order that there should be the light of Hashem being enclosing within the midas, that's the idea that we see the midas, so to speak, which is a level of concealment and invertedness. And this is all the level of the seal that comes, that when it's from below to above in a way that it's protruding, then we have from above to below that it's inverted. And that's what it's called a seal on your arm. As we say, His left hand is under my head. In other words, Roshi, head, here refers to the same letters of the word Yisrael. that it should be under my head, under the level of Yisrael, that who causes that the Jewish people should be uplifted. This is through the godly spark that we lift up from below to above, which is in the level from his left, which through that we go in a way of outside and we lift ourselves up to Hashem in a way of protruding. Hashem becomes revealed upon us, but in a way that it's inverted. We see the vessel, we don't see Hashem, so to speak, himself. But then there's the second level of the seal, which is from below to above, which there we're inverted. And that's the level of Shemoneh Esrei, which is davening silently and bowing down to Hashem with a total nullification to the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish. And it says, halavai, if only a person should daven a whole day. Because this is the idea of this leftover impact that happens, that our soul becomes like dirt, like that for all. And we're not a being of self whatsoever. In other words, that you shouldn't be like a person of self that can't nullify himself. Rather, your whole desire should be totally nullified as Hashem wants. And this is through the mitzvahs of the negative commandments, which are high in the level of the positive commandments. As it says, my name, Shmi, with Yudke, equals 365, which refers to the negative commandments. And that's the level of Tefillin Shayad is the level of Vav-K, the lower two levels of Hashem's name, which is to cleave to Hashem in positive commandments, that you should ascend to Hashem in the way of a mountain, as we said before. But now we're saying is not like a mountain, right? But the level of Yud-K, that is to have totally nullification in the negative commandments, in a way of loy, of being not, and through that, you draw down from above the opposite, which is the seal that is protruding. Because the time that there's a Beis Hamikdash, the time that there's no Beis Hamikdash, then it says we don't see our signs. Everything is all in concealment. And look what it says about this in the Ma'amar Yishein of Libe'er. On the other hand, Mashiach will come. Then it says that your teacher will not be hidden anymore. And the explanation of this is that there's two levels of Torah. There's Torah and there's Torah. There's Torah, which we say, my words that I put into your mouth. In other words, we see your mouth. In other words, it's in a way that it's inverted, that it should be the enclothing of the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu and Chachma. And the Chachma is already a level of wisdom, which is a vessel. And this Chachma is a vessel that says that he encloses light like a shirt. But in order that this garment should not conceal and be hiding the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is enclosed with it, but rather we should have eye to eye, we should see. And it says, Chashav Hashem Ezreya Koche, God will reveal his arm, and all nations will see, etc. For the eyes of all the nations, he will reveal his righteousness. On this, it's called a koirei b'Torah. You call out in Torah. The idea of learning Torah, even though you already know the halacha, it's a mitzvah to be involved in it, to draw the light of the Ein Sof Baruch. That should be godliness revealed down here in this world, and that for the garment should not conceal whatsoever. And this revelation is called v'yiminai tichapkeni, not smoilei, as we said before. Rather, the right hand should embrace me, like a person who embraces his friend and doesn't let him fall and separate from him whatsoever. And look also what it says in the Ma'amar Rabbi Shmini Atzeres. And this is what's called like a seal on your heart, which this is from the straps that are hanging from the tefillin on the heart. Because tefillin are the actual letters that are written on parchment. And so that letter has to be totally encircled with parchment from all sides, all four sides. Because the letters itself, they are the ascension of the soul and what it's able to grasp in Hashem. But the actual parchment, that's even higher than the letters, because that's what carries and is able to handle the letters. And so where does this parchment come from? From the same skin, from the same leather from which the straps of the tefillin come from. It's all from the level of the skin of an animal, which is pure, and the yitzuas that come down from the parchment. There's what comes onto the heart, and there should be a revelation of love in the heart. That it should be that Hashem, we have this love of Hashem. V'yimine, God's Hashem's right hand is embracing us, and that's what we said. We should be like a seal on your heart, because it is so strong, the amount of love as that the way the neshama, even though it doesn't need the body, yet it's very hard to separate. Even though that the body conceals and hides and the light of the soul, because the body is a vessel to the neshama. But so the Jewish people ask of Hashem, place me as a seal on your heart, that even though I'm going to be concealed and I'm in a dark place, and I go from place to place, yet I want that my face, my image should stay within you, which is a total nullification, as we have in Shemoneh Esrei, etc. That in other words, that the Eibishter himself, I should be on the Eibishter, that's what he should see, etc. And that brings about revelation of the Eibishter, that we feel the Eibishter himself. And even though that after davening, this love leaves us and it goes, yet we say we want it as a seal all the time, that you should be, so to speak, embraced in us, that we should never fall and we never be able to leave you, as a person who embraces a friend from the back. The same way your right hand should embrace us, even from the backside, that even when I go this way and that way, because the Jewish people are only a vessel, as it says, Noisek Li Hashem, that during the time of davening we're totally nullified, and therefore a remnant and a vision of that face stays, and Alavai, it should be an entire day, we should have this level of tefillah, etc. He said, this is what it says, that a woman who will be seed first, give birth to a male. And Acham said, meaning that when the ascent happens from below to above, in a way that we are intruded, we're totally nullified. And why is it like a woman? Because he says that the yesod of the level of nukva is inverted, which that is the level of fear, which is when you are less of self. And it says that his sister stood from the distance. In other words, from the distance, that is the level of bittul. And through that, you give birth to a zachar. In other words, it comes from above in a way that it's protruding, that it becomes a seal that is protruding. And that's where it says that his children, he sealed with the sign of the holy bris. And look also what it says about Yaakov, about the idea of iskafia and itzhapcha, that through the level of iskafia, of breaking oneself, where you make that your soul should be like dirt, you arouse a arousal from above, from the level of seiv kalam in itself, which is much higher than you're able to arouse from the level of total transformation of oneself. And that's also similar to what he's explaining here. And look what he says in Parashat Bechukaisai on this pasuk of that the 10 women will bake, etc. That it means that the 10 powers of the soul should be in a way of feminine. In other words, that you should know that the truth is in all good that you have within it. You're only getting it from above, and you're totally nullified to Hashem. That's really that the one who is the true master has given it to you, and through that, Hashem will light up your darkness, and that's the same idea, that through the level of feminine and woman, so to specifically, which is the chaysam, which is Sheikeah, you will get a revelation from Hashem, which is the level of Zachar, which is the level of Chaysam Boilet, a revelation of God's love, clearly Hashem himself, that you could see it and feel it in a revealed way, like will be when Mashiach will come. So now he says in the brackets, we can also add, and this idea of placing me as a seal, that these are tefillin, that we know the Eibishter idea of the Eibishter putting on tefillin is that it is the idea of drawing down the light of the Ein Sof, and it should shine in the level of Chachma Bina. Therefore, the first parsha of Shema, it says Kimikai Gadol, and then when it says Migai Gadol, which is at the level of Chachma Ilah, and when the Ein Sof gets enclosed within the Chachma Ilah, which Torah, as we know, comes from Chachma, then the Jewish people are seen as great things, as we see in the Maimer Kim Chamakarchaim, and the idea of Shkif and you should bless the Jewish people. In other words, Torah itself speaks about the greatness of the Jewish people. So when God is revealed through Torah and the world sees godliness revealed through Torah, what do we see? We see the greatness and the praise and the great ability and power and the specialty of the Jewish people. She says now the level of Chachma itself is called a seal. As it says in the Maimer Lamasei by the idea of Yichtiv Moshe, that it says that the seal of Hashem is a level of truth, and that's a level of Chachma. And that's where it says you should place me like a seal, that it's in the tefillin of the Eibishter, which that is the seal of God. That what does it say in it? Kimi Goy Gadol, who is like a great nation. In other words, and that is what we want, that seal of the Eibishter should be me. I should be the seal, which is that the greatness of the Jewish people should be on the hand and heart of Hashem. He said, but even though now our signs are not seen, that is because when we draw down from the level of, we're getting a revelation from the seal of God that's inverted. And look what it says about the pasuk when Mashiach will come, then we'll see eye to eye, and that's the idea of the protruding chaysam, the protruding seal that'll be then, because then there'll be the revelation that. Of the supernal Chachma, which is hidden of all hidden, that will see Hashem himself through it, and not just the revelation as it comes through Chachma. Okay, and that's what it says. It should be like a seal on the heart, and your right hand should embrace me, which is a level of Chesed, which is the inner Chesed, which is called the true Chesed, which is the source of all truth. That we say that Shem is the true one, and there's nothing other than Him. That will be revealed when Mashiach will come. Okay, So this is the idea of, and I think as he's saying it here as follows, that when we act in a way of tefillin shel yad, which is, we said before, the level of the then we get from Hashem the level of the tefillin shorosh. On the other hand, when we have from ourselves the tefillin shorosh, then we have, so to speak, the revelation from Hashem in the tefillin shel yad. Okay. And as I said before, the tefillin shel yad is what we call from us being inverted, protruding, and therefore we get from Hashem the tefillin shorosh, which is inverted. On the other hand, the revelation of the Eibusher tefillin shel yad, and we'll see this idea make a difference in a moment. So according to this, we'll explain what it says in the Gemara, that there was two things that the Jewish people asked, and they didn't ask properly. And the Eibusher answered them properly. The first one is, I should be like, you should come to us like rain. And Hashem answered, no, I'll be like dew. And the second one was, you should place me like a sign, like a stamp, a sign, as we said, a seal. And the Eibusher says, no, that I should be a kapayim chakisayach, that you should be engraved in my hands. So in Shir Hashirim Rabbi, on this pasuk, he explains this at even greater length. And so understand this idea of that it could be like a rain, that's the idea that there should be an arousal from above that happens because of an arousal from below. The Eidyala. But the idea of being dew is that it should be an arousal from below, above that happens of its own without an arousal from below. And from a level that an arousal from below doesn't reach. And so the reason why we didn't ask well is we should have asked for the arousal of above that happens automatically. So the same way we'll understand also in this idea of placing me like a seal. He says, for example, a seal that's made from the physical way that when you put you engrave your name on the seal, it's on the seal, but yet that is what makes everything. That's the stamp, the seal that makes everything complete. In other words, it sustains it. In other words, when the king's seal is on a decree, it can never be revoked. And that's the idea of. And he said this is the idea of the supernal wisdom, which is called the seal of Hashem, the truth. And this level of chachma is called by Hashem like an asiyah, like a physical thing. And it says, Kul b'chachma sisa. And in this itself, there's a protruding. And in this, there is a protruding seal and a inverted seal, which is the higher level of chachma and the lower level of chachma. And the lower level of chachma is the level of malchus generally. The higher level of chachma is considered level of chachma. And so the meaning of this request is, when we ask if there should be a seal, is that when godliness gets enclosed within the chachma of Torah, which comes from the level of chachma, so there the Jewish people should be seen as a important thing and a great thing. As it says in the entire Torah, speak to the Jewish people, command the Jewish people. But at a level that's higher than Torah, higher than wisdom, on that it says, if you do righteousness, what have you done? And therefore we ask, put me as a seal. In other words, the level there should be a level of Torah, and my Torah should be, so to speak, on your heart. But the Eibusher answered, but for whatever reason, this is not right, as we'll see in a moment. And he says, but the Eibusher answered that no, you should be engraved on my palms. Because this request that you should make me as a seal is still considered not proper. Why? Because a seal is still a physical thing and something separate from the essence of Hashem. In other words, you're asking just for yourself, or you're asking that from Hashem's revelation, the Jewish people should be great. In other words, it should be seen in things that are separate from Hashem. But that's not but rather, the same way that light of the Ein Sof is exalted so many levels and without any limit higher than Chachma. And even the level of the protruding seal, which is the revelation of wonders as the leaving of Egypt, which is greater than our situation where we don't see our signs. It says even that, oisei fella, that even these wonders are asiyah. They're just like an action and physical thing by Hashem. And who is called Adon HaNiflos. He's called the master of all wonders. And it says about this in the Maimer Shil Hashem Ki Goy Go. But in truth, the Jewish people, they come up in the thought of Hashem, which in this original thought of Hashem, which is higher than wisdom, and look in the Maimer Tzech Al Shminis and what it says there. about Yisrael lead Rosh, that in the very essence of God we exist, and therefore Hashem says that I'll engrave you on my palms, which these are the levels that are carved in the essence of Hashem. On the other hand, the seal are only letters that are engraved in something that is separate, in something that's outside, so to speak, in the light of Hashem, but not in Hashem himself. And this in the pasuk and this Torah, in this idea that he carved a carving in the original Tehiru Ilah, which is higher than wisdom, and that's where the source of the Jewish people come from, the souls of the Jewish people, and that is what he says, Akapayich, that I engraved you on my hands, is this level, and is this level which is the what the Eibusher answered us properly.